Hey StingKnight, today's video will be a brief DPS comparison of all the current jobs out at the moment. And we're going to be taking a look at the Extreme Trial 1 and 2, and we'll be mostly focused on our DPS range, maybe a little bit of NDPS to compare personal DPS of some of the jobs like Viper and Samurai, and then finally taking a look at the 90th percentile, maybe the maximum percentile, which is like the #1 player, or 90th percentile, the top 10% of the players, to get a more accurate representation of the jobs. So across the board, I would say melees seems to be fairly even, except for Ninja, lagging behind slightly. I would expect some sort of buff for Ninja in the coming weeks. Before we talk about Pictomancer, Pictomancer is an obvious outlier here. Let's take a look at the NDPS first, comparing Viper and Samurai. So I guess it's official, Viper is a stronger personal DPS than a Samurai, which before most people play Samurai because it's the top dog, right? You want to do the most DPS without any influence of other players. And now we take a look at the 90th percentile. What this is telling me is that if you actually learn to play Pictomancer and you get good at it, really it's just another melee job. It's doing the same amount of damage, contributing the same amount of damage as a melee job, which is absolutely bonkers and insane to me. Pictomancer 100% getting a nerf coming in the upcoming weeks. There's no doubt about it. Red Mage and Summoner is where you can expect them to be at. However, for Black Mage, they got the short end of the stick. Supposedly the strongest job in the game. In the previous expansion, they were going toe-to-toe against Samurai, you know, for the top damage spot. But now it's just a bit of a joke. They've been nerfed to oblivion. There's absolutely zero reason to play Black Mage when you have Red Mage for the prog, for the resurrection potential, or you have Pictomancer for the damage output. Whereas before it would have been Black Mage, but that's not the case anymore. Black Mage is just gone into the dumpster. I honestly don't have too much insight for physical range. It looks fairly balanced to me overall. I'm surprised that Bard is actually doing more damage than Summoner, so that's a bit of a shock to me. I'm assuming that Summoner might get a little buff. I honestly don't think Summoner should get any buffs because it's literally one of the easiest jobs in the game. And Dancer, that is kind of RNG heavy. Honestly, I don't play physical range that much, so I cannot give too much insight on that. Now we take a look at Extreme Trials 2. It's pretty clear that melee across the board is doing way less DPS. Probably because of some mechanics in the fight, I assume, where you have to be moving away from the boss. Okay, it's actually crazy to me. Pictomancer, one of the fairly new casted job. I wouldn't say it's hard to play. It seems pretty easy and straightforward to me. And it's at the top. It's actually at the top of the raid damage. This job 100% getting a fat nerf in the coming weeks, guys. I'm sure of it. This job will 100% get a nerf, and Black Mage should get a buff in theory. They should get a buff. There has been a recent patch note of potential job changes coming up in the next few weeks, so I'm looking forward to that. Perhaps Black Mage will get a big buff this time around, because look at it. Just look at Black Mage. It's absolutely miserable playing Black Mage. Who the hell would play Black Mage? Come on now. When there is a Pictomancer just popping the hell off. I don't know. Honestly, don't know what to say. Now let's take a look at the maximum percentile. So the highest amount of damage anyone has ever done for Extreme Trial 1 is by Pictomancer, which is just, yeah. Once again, it's just absolutely overtuned. It needs a nerf. And then we take a look at for Extreme Trial 2 as well. Pictomancer at the top of the list. Now let's take a look at the tanks. Gunbreaker obviously at the top is popping off. Significantly more DPS than the rest of the others. Gunbreaker is a little higher than Warrior by a few hundred. Significantly more than Dark Knight and Paladin. I would 100% expect some type of buff for Paladin in the coming weeks as well. Maybe Dark Knight too. I don't know if Warrior will get a buff because I think Warrior has more sustainability. It's a little easier, more comfortable to play than Gunbreaker. So maybe they will leave things the way they are for Warrior. Just have Gunbreaker as like the top damage tank. A little bit more busy, a little bit more difficult to play than the other tanks. And it looks the exact same for Extreme Trial 2 for the tanks as well. For the healers, it looks like Astrologian is the top. I quite like this, as Astro is, I would say, the hardest healer to play. Well, Scholar though, it's a shame that it's at the bottom. And let's take a look at the actual value. So about 8,478 as a median, 170 less, 110 less, 150 less. So I think Scholar might get a big buff, but if we take a look at Extreme Trial 2 as well, it does seem like that Astrologian and Sage is more on par with each other, and then there's Scholar and White Mage together, lower damage than the other two. I think that Scholar probably deserves some type of damage buff, maybe a little bit more, maybe just a tiny bit. I'm not sure if White Mage should get a buff here. I think it looks fine and okay, honestly, to me. I mean, consider this as, White Mage being like probably the easiest healer to play, therefore it does the least amount of damage. I'm not sure if that's a good way to go about it, but I think White Mage doing a little less than the other healers is somewhat fair. But there's also Sage. Sage is not exactly difficult to play either, so that is up for discussion. Honestly, I'm not sure if they will buff this, buff any healers at all. Honestly, they seem quite balanced. Astrologian being the outlier, I think it's deserved because Astrologian being the most difficult. For this particular fight, Scholar is lowest. And then for Extreme Trial 2, White Mage is the lowest, but not by a lot. Honestly, I would probably leave the healers alone and not make any changes to them at the moment and wait for longer or for more future data to take a good look at it. So that's it for this video, guys. Leave a comment down below of what you think of these damage numbers, these DPS numbers from all these different jobs. You know, your thoughts and your opinions on it, whether you're happy with it or you're not happy with it or you're angry about it. I can assume if you're Black Mage main, you would be angry. And that's it. If you enjoyed the video, leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more future FF14 content. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.